name is Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for joining us on the I Love CVille Show. It's great to connect with you through the I Love CVille Network. Our studio is in downtown Charlottesville. We are less than 2 miles from the University of Virginia. We are 30, 40 yards from the Charlottesville Police Department, a block off the downtown mall, a block removed from the courthouses of Albemarle in the city of Charlottesville, and smack dab in the center of Central Virginia, a market of 300,000 people. Today's show is one that I have looked forward to. Judah has said previously he has looked forward to. We have in our studio, you will see him in a matter of about 25 seconds, Kurt R. Johnson. And he is the author of this book, which I have in my hand, Schooled, the Miseducation of an American Teacher. I read this book in about 2 hours and change. It was an approachable read, a compelling read, and it's a read that I think is a must for any in the Central Virginia market and any of those that have children in a school of any kind. Kurt has experience in hallways and classrooms all over the world, and he has most recently experience from teaching 9th graders at Charlottesville High School. And at this particular institution of learning, CHS, Kurt has highlighted that there's 2 schools within one school, the School of Advanced Placement and Honors Classes, and in an alternative learning environment. On that note, Judah Wickower, if you can go to the studio camera and welcome Kurt R. Johnson to the show. You're on camera, the microphone is in front of you. Thank you kindly for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is certainly new territory for me personally.
It's a pleasure to have you. I heard about this book from a number of viewers and listeners, and then I got a copy in the mail from you. I read this book, and I could not put it down.
Thank you.
First, introduce yourself to everybody that's watching the show.
Hi, my name is Kurt Johnson. I'm a veteran educator, born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm the middle child of 2 public school teachers. And my connection to Charlottesville started when I was 10. My dad took a sabbatical to UVA in 1981. And in addition to taking classes at UVA, he was also a graduate assistant for Terry Holland's Cavaliers with Ralph Sampson. I mean, he was the national player of the year. Virginia was #1 for most of that year. Anyway, it created a lot of great memories for me as a kid, and so when it was my turn to go to college, I decided on UVA in Charlottesville.
You start the book by saying you had college basketball aspirations.
I did.
Basketball seemed to be woven into your childhood through a passion of your father's that was transitioned into a passion in part for you. Then you highlight in this book, and you can tell I read it here, you highlight in this book that as soon as you started playing college basketball, what did you say? You described yourself as what, like a 6'3", 6'4" guy with limited athleticism, not much leaping ability, and you're like, okay, this is college basketball, I get it now.
I think I said I was gravitationally challenged.
Fighting gravity, Judah just said it right there.
Yeah, so like my dad played college hoops, small D3 school in northern Minnesota, Concordia College. My older brother went there. It was the only school that recruited me, probably because of my familial connections, and so I went there as well. And after 2 years, I didn't really crack the varsity rotation, so I looked beyond, and I transferred to UVA to kind of get the bigger college experience, and at a school that I had been rooting for, obviously, since '81.
You mentioned Ralph Sampson. He was here a few weeks ago in that chair right there. Quite an aura and presence to him, Ralph Sampson. He leaves the studio after doing this talk show and literally stopped traffic on Market Street. There was a car going toward the police department and a car going away from the police department. Both stopped in the center of the road with traffic behind them just to greet Ralph Sampson. And it's been decades since he's played basketball.
He's a legend.
He is an absolute legend. But I want to talk about you. It's so crazy that your decision to transfer to UVA to close your college career ends up being one of the influences or factors of you coming to Charlottesville from across the world.
Sure.
Put that in perspective.
Yeah, I had a great time at UVA, and my experiences here, particularly with Madison House and the volunteer experiences I did, sort of like got me thinking about volunteerism after college. And so I joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Nepal, where I met my wife. And we decided to come back to the States and get certified in teaching because that was a good way to spend a career internationally. So after 21 years overseas teaching at different international schools, Singapore, Mumbai, India, and Jakarta, Indonesia, we decided sort of post-pandemic or during the pandemic, things were rough, obviously around the world. It was a global phenomenon, and our kids were entering high school. We thought, let's get them an American experience. And so, yeah, we didn't want to do Minnesota, we didn't want to do Texas, so we decided to split the difference and let's move to a college town. And we had obviously a connection here through me, and mountains, ocean, diversity, great restaurants and culture, and so
all the reasons we love to live here.
Exactly. So we chose Charlottesville.
So you choose Charlottesville. You write in the book. You move to Ivy. You rent a house in Ivy.
Yep.
And at that point of moving across the world to Charlottesville, you're like, all right, I got to figure out what I'm going to do professionally.
Yeah.
And even in the book, you say, I didn't want to get back into teaching.
I sort of thought I could reinvent myself, and
that ain't easy.
No, I'm still struggling with it. But I think I said in the book that I kind of cast a wide net. I looked at Monticello. I'm a history guy, so maybe, hey, I could work and give tours at Monticello. I looked at just anything, like maybe deliver mail, maybe kind of work with my hands, like just do something different. Use this next family adventure as a means to just try something new. See what else I can do, as it were. But then kids are going to work, or kids are going to school. My wife's going to work. I got to get something going for me, and so I decided to interview for what I do. I'm a 24 year veteran teacher, and so I decided to interview for a position at Charlottesville High.
Bill McChesney on McIntyre Road, welcome to the show. Vanessa Parkhill's watching in Earlysville. John Blair in Stanton. Dylan's Rule retweets us on Twitter. Ginny Who retweets us. The show's, I knew this show was going to go viral here. It's because of this guy here. So you take a job at CHS. It almost seemed like that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, that they were begging you, Charlottesville High School, to take this job.
Well, I mean, I interviewed during the teacher kind of prep week, mm-hmm. So it was really late for them to be hiring somebody. But I don't think that they were any more desperate than I was, because okay. I had applied for that particular position a month prior, and I hadn't heard anything. And I think it just sort of was that late in the game that they called me in for an interview. And
did it concern you that late in the game that there were openings of this magnitude?
I guess I taught 2 years in New Mexico to start my teaching career.
New Mexico?
New Mexico,
okay.
Just off the Navajo reservation. And, it was a lower socioeconomic area that, was a challenge. And so I sort of thought, after 21 years, I guess I was kind of naive coming back into the public school scene. And I just sort of thought, hey, this is what I do. I'm a teacher. I've taught in difficult situations. And as the administrators told me during the interview, this is a barbell school, which I hadn't heard.
What's that mean?
It means, they defined it as a school with two very distinct socioeconomic groups of people, and not much in between. And they said I would be teaching to the lower end of that barbell. So I got home from the interview and I got a call, and they said, you got the job? And I said, thank you, I'll take it,
Tom Stargill's watching the program. He's a retired teacher, a Golden Apple Award-winning teacher. He's watching right now from ACPS. You are at the start of the 2022-2023 school year at Charlottesville High School. We are coming out of COVID. Mm-hmm. We are returning to in-person learning. We are, in a lot of ways, feeling the early collateral damage of the pandemic, of forcing kids to basically learn in their bedrooms, their coat closets, their kitchen tables, and their underwear on screens,
Yeah.
as opposed to in person in classrooms in front of teachers. And we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
2022, 2023 school year, your first day on the job, what's going through your mind? And then we're going to do the flip book of what was maybe the most challenging teaching year of your professional career.
Yeah, I didn't keep a daily journal. I think if I reflect back on those early days, it was what teachers go through at the beginning of any year. You know, kind of get, you know, learn the students' names, learn the routine of the school, as it was a new school for me. You know, meet colleagues. You know, where do I eat lunch? Do I eat lunch at my desk, or is there a place where people go to eat lunch? And just kind of figure out just the basic things that anybody deals with when they start a new job. But as for a teacher, it was just sort of kind of find my place and figure out what was going on, just the day-to-day, the schedule, when's lunch, do I see the same classes at the same time every day, or do they mix it up a little bit? So it was just try to kind of get going, learn names, learn colleagues. Sit in meetings and ask questions.
Philip Dow, watching the program from Sarasota, Florida right now. Okay, so you are transitioning, you are figuring the ropes, learning where the bathroom is, the faculty bathroom. The faculty bathroom comes up in this book. The faculty bathroom, not so much a faculty bathroom, much more of a student bathroom, and you feel for the students utilizing the faculty bathroom because the students utilizing the faculty bathroom in the book are fearful of what's actually going on in the student bathroom.
Yeah.
So much so that they are going into a bathroom of their teachers, which if I was a high schooler, I would not want to go anywhere near the teachers, especially not in a bathroom setting.
Yeah.
But they did this out of survival. I'll get to that in a matter of moments. When did you start realizing, oh my goodness, this is a pretty precarious and tumultuous environment I'm in?
Yeah, I mean, pretty quickly. Some of the early initiatives to start last school year were, you know, no eating in the classroom, no phones, phone zones and phone-free zones. And I noticed that all my students would just eat whenever they wanted and look at their phones whenever they wanted. And regardless of what I had to say, there was no change in the behavior. And this, you know, other things started to occur. We had a couple lockdown drills early in last school year. We had, you know, I could smell marijuana every day. I was witness to more than one fight in the first few months of school, and so it was just sort of like my eyes were wide open at that point. Like, I thought I had seen a lot in my career, but as I mentioned earlier, I was just kind of naive to the things that I was going to be subject to. And I do want to just sort of say that I didn't write this book to bash CHS. I was privy to a lot of dysfunction in my role there, but I know that there's a lot of functional things happening at CHS as well. There's a lot of dedicated staff. There's a lot of motivated students. But as the low man on the totem pole coming in, getting a job with a week to go before the school year began.
I mean, you got the challenge, arguably the most challenging job.
I think yes. When I think back to the people that left last year along with me, there was a lot of teachers of ninth grade students who were not teaching AP. Yeah.
And that goes back to the statement that we talked about prior to the show, 2 schools within Charlottesville High School,
Yeah.
the AP honors track and then the non-AP honors track. We're going to pick that apart here in a matter of moments. Comments are coming in quickly. Deep Throat, who's number 1 in the family, he sends a graph that highlights the barbell disparity, a data-backed graph, the barbell disparity at Charlottesville High School. We can put that on screen when you are ready. This is a dynamic talk show right here. We got a lot of things going on. I want to throw this to you, Kurt. I've said on previous shows, and it's no secret, anyone who consistently watches this program knows that I am a huge supporter of decriminalizing and legalizing marijuana across the board. I think the effects of cannabis and marijuana incarcerations vastly impacts people of color when compared to people like you, me, and Judah, and the data backs up that statement. I also have said many times that cannabis can be utilized in many beneficial forms for many different types of either illnesses, anxieties, whatever you want to describe it as. It can be positive. I've also said on this program that I, myself, smoke, okay? I will throw this to you. What took me aback in this book was the regular usage of marijuana on school grounds. As someone who's someone who's backed or supported or vocalized his platform on marijuana, I do not support or stand for it on school grounds in any capacity. The regular nature of you smelling it every day, I was taken aback by that reading in the book because it shows a lack of accountability and a lack of enforcement of rules. If kids are walking out of classrooms in the hallways and daily on the regular smelling marijuana, it would lead them to believe, oh, I can do it too, or what else can I get away with if this rule is not enforced?
Yeah. Yeah, I will echo everything you said about marijuana legislation and the criminalization of it in the past. I think in the past 10, 15 years, we're definitely going in the right direction. But just because it's legalized doesn't mean it should be used by children. And
especially not in schools.
Well, it's not legal for them.
Yeah.
Right? It's not legal for
it's 18 and over.
14, 15, 16-year-olds. So, I mean, I voted for Gary Johnson in 2016.
The Libertarian?
In part because, yeah, he's like, let's get government out of certain issues, and that was a big one for me. But yeah, it's you know, if you walk the halls of CHS every day, there's no way that you cannot recognize the odor of marijuana. You smell it in the hallways between passing periods as kids go off to and vape in the bathrooms. You smell it on your students in their clothes, and you know, I think the adults in the room need to come up with a strategy to better, you know, regulate the illegal use of drugs in the school. I mean, it's just I'm not asking for much here. And you said accountability. That's a big part of sort of my. You know, it's not mine. It's just this is what happens in. You know, you have to increase the level of accountability in schools where they have, you know, lost their way a little bit, because students are the first to recognize when they can get away with things, and it perpetuates, it snowballs. And you know, kids wouldn't openly smoke it in the hallways, but just the smell of it is obviously the telltale sign. And
did you bring that to anyone's attention?
Yeah, I would.
Or is it a don't ask, don't tell? It's like the monkeys with the emojis covering my eyes, my ears, and my mouth. Is that what it is?
I did earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Because that was when I thought, okay, I'll use this system. There's a system that we use as teachers there to note any sort of misbehavior whether it's use of phone or perpetual tardies. On probably a half dozen occasions, I wrote up students and I said, I think this student I smell marijuana on them. And oftentimes it was part of another, you know, disciplinary thing. You know, they were rude, they were using foul language, and I smelled marijuana. So, and you know, oftentimes most of the time there was just no follow-up on those things that I wrote up. I never knew where this particular infraction that I identified, I never knew where it went. It kind of went into a vacuum or the ether.
That's got to be demoralizing.
Well, you just stop writing kids up, and you deal with your world in your own classroom, and you do the best you can, and you come up with ways to, you know, get through that class period, get through that day, put out the fires on your own. You know, that's what happens. You deal with it on your own.
Put in perspective, there's a portion of the book that describes an interaction he had with a student. And the student is late for class in the book. and trying to get into Kurt's classroom, Kurt's the teacher of the classroom, is banging aggressively on the door of Kurt's classroom. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so we lock our doors. We're told to lock our doors once the bell rings and to indicate the start of class. And
Is that the norm?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
It's to keep it's to regulate who's coming in and out of your room.
Okay.
But also to prevent random people from coming into your room during the class.
Okay.
And on this particular day, about 2/3 through the school year, the student was just pounding on my door as I was trying to get class started. And so I walked back. I walked from the front of the classroom to the back where the door was. I opened it, and I just asked the student, like, "Can we try that again?" I thought it was a teachable moment to say, This isn't how we try to get into class. This isn't how we knock on the door. And he became instantly volatile, tried to get in my room. And so as he tried to walk into the room, I thought I'd put my hands up just to sort of say, let's deal with this just one-on-one outside. I don't want all the students to have to watch this. There's nothing to see. And as he came into my space, I put my hands up, and I guess I put my hands on him. But he started to yell, drop F-bombs on me. And I just said, you're not going to be in my class today. And I asked some CSAs who
Explain what CSA is.
Community and Safety Advisor? I might be getting the A wrong, but they are just people from the community that are responsible for kind of being present in the hallways and helping teachers out when they need some support for generally types of misbehavior.
So this is a lower level school resource officer.
Correct.
Without the backing of police authority. It's a community member that's looking to maintain order or provide guidance in some capacity within the hallways at Charlottesville High School.
Correct.
So a CSA comes to this or sees this interaction or is told of this interaction with you and the student that's banging on your door rudely, trying to get into your classroom, and you're trying to basically use a teachable moment to say this isn't how we do things, and when you realize that it was no longer a teachable moment, that this is way past the point, you kindly ask the student, you disinvited the student from class.
Yeah, I said, I can't handle this. I can't handle the aggressiveness, and I've got a class to teach. I got 25 other kids sitting in their seats who were here on time. And so I shut the door, and it locked. And he went and found a couple. That's what happened. He went and found a couple CSAs. They brought him back to my class. They said the CSAs asked me if I wanted him in my class, and I said no. He's been a distraction here early in the class period. I think he needs to be somewhere else today. And it shook me. It was the last class of the day, and as I was sitting there after the final bell rang. The principal came in, we talked about it. I guess a bunch of people in the office had seen the tape of the situation.
And what's tape? There's cameras in the hallway?
Cameras in the hallway,
okay.
CCTV.
Okay.
And the phrase that was used was, by the principal to me, was, it looked like you laid your hands on the student. And I just said, I put my hands up. He came into my space. The student was a repeat, he had been repeatedly disciplined up to that point of the year for being in fights, and I was concerned.
And you're not a small guy. I mean,
No.
he's sitting down right here. I mean, how tall are you?
I'm 6'2".
He's 6'2", what, 210?
Yeah, on a good day.
Yeah. Okay, this is not a small person here. I mean, imagine if this was, a smaller guy or a petite female teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all about, as a teacher, good relationships with kids. That's what drives me. Take an interest in their lives, find something to connect with them on, so that when there is sort of this potential volatility between teacher and student, like, you have something to lean on.
Common ground.
Common ground. And it didn't happen that day. I was told that a letter of concern would go in my file for how I tried to de-escalate the situation. That clearly didn't sit well with me. I didn't really think I had any sort of leverage. I don't know much about the unions in Charlottesville, but I knew I wasn't paying any dues or anything. I talked to some colleagues about it, and they thought it was BS as well. But I didn't want to quit. I'm not a quitter. I didn't feel like that the situation didn't sit well with me, but neither would quitting and just saying, okay, I'm going to take my ball and go home. But yeah, it impacted me. I don't. That kind of conflict doesn't belong in schools. It's sort of this cussing at your teacher because they're trying to give you a teachable moment. Yeah.
The principal in this turn of events is Principal Rashad Pitt. I bring his name up because Principal Pitt, during this school year, the one after Kurt's school year, during the 2023-2024 school year, Principal Pitt was the principal who announced that he was going to resign prior to Thanksgiving. Right around Thanksgiving, and that was mid-year, and then he shocked the Charlottesville public school system by resigning on the 9th of November, prior to the early resignation date he established weeks prior. He quit before he said he was going to quit, and that's during the school year. So we're going to get to Dr. Pitt here, or Principal Pitt here in a matter of moments. Before we do, comments are coming in quickly. Kevin Higgins is in Greenwood, Virginia. He said, Kurt committed to doing everything with limited resources. I bet no resources at all. This dude is a hero. He's a hero because he cares for kids. What a snafu some schools are in right now. This guy seems like a genuine dude. He's much nicer than I ever would be if I was in the classroom. You have another educator, David Riddick, watching the program on LinkedIn right now. Multiple media outlets watching Kurt on the show as we speak. The book, I'll plug it, is School, the Miseducation of an American Teacher. I want to talk about the portion of the book that talks or highlights what was the free period called during Charlottesville High School? You describe it in the book. It's a period.
It's a weekly Black Night period.
A Black Night period. There was a portion of the school day called Black Night period where students are giving a little bit of freedom, where they can get ahead of homework, they can read, they can socialize.
Black Night time. BKT. Sorry.
BKT. Black Night time. The mascot is the Black Knights for Charlottesville High School. Walk us through the portion of the book that talks about Black Night time and why it ended up getting throttled or limited. This floored me here.
Yeah, well, it's, once a week there would be Black Night time where students could, it's kind of like an advisory period. Students would sit in my classroom, they would watch the weekly update, the news update that the high school audiovisual team would put together, kind of like a TV show, and give updates on things. Kids would do surveys on the types of music they wanted to dance or whatnot, and kids could go see teachers that they had missing work with. They could go to the gym sometimes. The gym was open at different times of the year, and at one point, one of my students said, because the gym was closed this particular Black Night time, and he said to the rest of the kids in the class, he's like, hey, do you know why the gym is closed during Black Night time? And I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
What's he gonna say? And before I could head it off, some girl said, why? Why is the gym closed? And the student volunteered that there was a couple kids that were caught underneath the bleachers, messing around, to put it mildly.
And the book is, and I'll say it, having sex in the book, on grounds.
Allegedly, right? I mean, I wasn't there. I heard what the kids said, and I guess it wouldn't have shocked me, no, if that was actually what was happening and why the gym was closed. But news like that didn't trickle down to teachers. We were never really informed of things that I felt that we should be informed on. Like, why are things the way they are?
And is that chalked up as ignorance is bliss? Is that chalked up to maintain morale?
It depends on your perspective, yeah. What do you... I would imagine the administration would sort of think, what do the teachers need to know? You're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know this. Maybe, I don't know. But, yeah, there was a lot that sort of is uncommunicated. Yeah.
Put in perspective the role of teachers when it comes to breaking up fightings or brawls. You highlight in this book, you can tell I read the book. You highlight in the book, there's a portion outside your classroom where it's like a magnet for student traffic.
Yeah.
It attracts different flows of students in different directions. And because this hub or this nexus is close to your classroom here, you had a clear vantage point of physicality. Mm-hmm. Shows yours.
Yeah. Early in the school year, there were some ninth grade girls fighting outside my classroom. One of the students I had in class, and so it was kind of it was just sort of a chaotic space of 30 students, two of whom were fighting, and a lot of students, take out their phones and start recording it, and they're laughing, kind of egging them on. I try to grab the girl that I know, kind of, but I'm not sure what I should do. And so I kind of didn't do anything. Fortunately, some admin and some CSAs ran up the steps and kind of put the individuals in a bear hug and removed them from the situation. I kind of talked to other teachers, like, what am I supposed to do?
Well, I mean, if you couldn't put your hands on the student that was banging on your door,
yeah.
And by put your hands up, you basically put your hands up like this to kind of like, he's in your personal space. Yeah. I mean, how can a teacher grab a student in a brawl?
Yeah, I didn't know, and so I kind of grabbed her shoulders, but then I realized that wasn't going to be enough, and so then now what do I do? And then again, as I said, fortunately, some people that were experienced with
de-escalation,
physical de-escalation came up and saved the day. But I asked colleagues, like, what do you do? Most were just like, yeah, just don't get involved. Just stay away. Or you're going to catch an elbow or catch a fist or... and
that's happened at Charlottesville High School. That happened this school year.
Yeah. It happened last school year, too.
Yeah. We've had other teachers on the program. Bill Mooncatchy talked about this at Almore High School, where teachers were catching elbows or errant punches and seriously injured trying to de-escalate these brawls. Just staying away and doing nothing,
feels really...
There's where I want to go.
Really helpless.
Yeah.
And, there's many more students than there are adults in any school building, obviously. And... there's only so much you can sort of head off before things get violent or physical like that. But you just sort of feel, what am I doing? I'm a bystander. I'm no better than the rest of the people standing around watching this. It's sad, I guess.
Is that what's your stance on school resource officers?
I know that's been a real contentious issue.
At CHS.
Yeah. I don't know much about that history. I know it's more of a post-George Floyd national issue. And, I don't think you can look at all schools as having the same needs, coast to coast. There are many different types of public schools, private schools, but I think some schools, they're more needed than others. And I think when you paint all police with the broad brush and just sort of say that they create some negative vibe throughout the school community, I think you have to weigh that against the alternative, if they're not around, to be a presence, a law enforcement presence that is respected. And I think police have always been well respected throughout most of my life, but that's changed in the last 7-8 years. And like any career, like any profession, there's good and there's bad. I think the vast majority of policemen are good, but yeah, I think the SRO conflict just became about post George Floyd. Police officers in school sort of became a red flag for a lot of people.
Multiple comments coming in, and we have a ranking of viewers and listeners. We've given some nicknames, others we utilize their first and last name. The number one in the family, he goes by the moniker Deep Throat. He put the data set together on the barbell. He highlights the Nextdoor thread about the book. He says there was an interesting thread locally on Nextdoor about Kurt's book. And in a very on-brand display, the chair of the city Democratic Party, a UVA professor, without ever having read Kurt's book, said this, quote, "Charlottesville is great. My kids went there and they were doing advanced work," end quote. Deep Throat then says, yeah, UVA professors' kids are doing great, but pay no attention to the 44% of the student body that is economically disadvantaged and based on the SOO numbers floundering. He then says, typical. That's a great segue for you to put the data set on screen of the barbell. The barbell data set's on screen. You're on point today, Judah Wickower, highlighting what Kurt has said with 2 schools within 1 school. Everyone look at the screen and look at the data that is on screen that reflects what we just said. I'm going to go to LinkedIn where this show is streaming on. Number 2 in the family, he's John Blair. He says this, Jerry, I'm truly interested in Mr. Johnson's perspective on this. Does he believe that his students were prepared from their education in earlier years to be a high school student? I know a couple of teachers at CHS who are disappointed, discouraged year after year when they see students who are functionally illiterate in their high school classes. Did he see this phenomenon?
I think, I'll try to answer this the best I can. I think schools exist to foster competencies. You've got the academic competencies and you've got socio-emotional competencies. And I think the pandemic took a lot out of kids to the point where they didn't always know how to behave socio-emotionally and how to succeed academically. And so I think some of the things we're seeing now are reflective of some of those challenges during the pandemic. And so to answer the question, yeah, I think there was a big dose of sort of illiteracy as it relates to those competencies coming up into the high school. Or any level, right? If it was 3rd grade students suffering during the pandemic, then their 5th and 6th grade classes experienced sort of this divide, this chasm, and from what pre-pandemic kids did to the pandemic era kids. So, so what do we do? How do we approach that as educators? How do we as administrators? How do we meet the kids where their needs are?
Well, it seems at CHS, one of the ways to approach it, or the way to approach it, is, what's it called, social promotion?
Yeah.
Where the choice is to continue to graduate or matriculate the kid or the student through school, because if the student is held back, that then means said student is on grounds longer and potentially hampering other students in the classroom longer.
Yeah, we didn't talk a whole lot about social promotion. Generally, and as the vast amount of my experience has been overseas, where you don't really have that. My understanding was it kind of ended at high school. So like once you got to high school, then it was time to you got to earn enough credits to graduate, and that is the case at CHS, absolutely. But I think one of the issues that's happened, not just at Charlottesville High, but as I feel like I'm pretty well read on educational issues throughout the country, expectations have been lowered. If we look at things like standardized tests have been taken off the table for a lot of school districts.
For a lot of colleges,
for a lot of universities. Colleges, and now they're finally starting to kind of go back on that.
And saying, oh my God, we needed to set standard to admit kids into the school an equal playing field, which in a lot of ways is obvious. It's common sense.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of grade inflation. So
right.
You have so many kids just getting A's, that colleges can't even figure out what to do. But that's just another example of lowering the bar. You know, great inflation or taking away honors classes. I read recently where I think there was the Seattle public school system took away their gifted and talented program. So we've got sort of this ideological thing happening with everything's looked at through these lenses of the whole DEI thing. And, you know, I'm not like an expert on it. I just feel like from the collective things that I am exposed to as just a conscientious adult and a former teacher, I'm not teaching this year, it just seems like everything is being driven by this equity piece, where we don't want anybody to feel like they're not as smart as somebody else, or working as hard as somebody else, or I mean that's a life skill. We have to get kids ready for the real world too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can we talk about administrative support? You mentioned Dr. Pitt already.
Mm-hmm.
He shocked the school system with his this past first semester resignation prior to Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Mr. Pitt, Principal Pitt, resigned, shortly thereafter, the teachers, and you highlight this in the book, a large portion of the teachers at Charlottesville High School did an unofficial sick out where they all called sick on the same day, which, if memory serves, caused the cancellation of 2 days of classes prior to Thanksgiving. And at that point, it was at that point that I think the community truly realized, and I hope the teachers realize, the true leverage and power they have.
Yeah.
The teachers are calling the shots here when they can do an unofficial sick day and force the superintendent to send a message to all the parents that school's canceled for 2 days before Thanksgiving. Now you got to figure out what to do with your kids during the workday.
Yeah.
I want to talk Principal Pitt, and I want to talk Dr. Gurley, the superintendent of Charlottesville High School, Charlottesville Public Schools. Anywhere you want to go on those topics? I
mean, Mr. Pitt hired me. It was last year, my only year at CHS. That was his first year, and he hired me, and I had a good relationship with Mr. Pitt. Really good guy. He was very personable, in my opinion. Obviously, all these things are my opinion. I guess one thing that's not an opinion is that he was very visible. He had this stand-up rolling desk, and he would always be working on his computer, but in a visible place, in the cafeteria, in certain hallways where there had been things like the fights that we talked about earlier. So I was impressed with that about Mr. Pitt. I've never been an administrator. There's kind of a disconnect between teachers and administrators, us versus them. Not necessarily contentious, but just sort of the reality of our jobs. I guess in reflecting on like what I have done as a teacher, generally I try to take care of things myself and not rely too much on administrators. I mean, I've got plenty of friends that are administrators, and when they make that transition from teaching to administration, they talk about how the only times they see teachers anymore, now that they're an administrator, is when there are problems. And yeah, I mean, the most interaction I had with Mr. Pitt was during that situation with the student that earned me a letter of concern. But no, I like him. I was sorry to hear that he left. You know, Dr. Gurley, I haven't had any interaction with. I don't think I've ever met him.
Is there any indication, and perhaps there's not, any indication of the influence that the superintendent has on the day-to-day operations of Charlottesville High School?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't fair. Like. I didn't have any sort of as a brand new teacher last year.
Yeah, totally.
Like I wasn't.
You were there 1 year.
I wasn't in on the meetings. I wasn't in on the school board stuff. I was just doing my job.
You highlight. You bring up school board. You highlight in the book, and I saw Dr. Bryce this morning. Interestingly, you highlight a school board race in a different district. This was in Albemarle County. It was the at-large seat between a race that featured Allison Spillman, who won the race, and Dr. Meg Bryce, who lost the race. a race that saw collectively both candidates, I think if memory serves correct, the collective fundraising totals were north of $700,000 for a
Crazy.
school board race. The fundraising totals, guys. A race that we can make a legitimate comment, this school board race, that was perhaps the most watched school board race in American history. Part of that is media is more ubiquitous now than it's ever been in the past. Cable news, CNBC, Fox, MSNBC were covering this school board race all over the newspapers, in the Washington Post, in the New York Times, the Spillman Bryce school board race. I want to start open-ended before I pick this race apart. Spillman versus Bryce, at-large seat, Albemarle County School Board, anywhere you want to go.
Part of my thesis, part of what I realized while writing this book was that everything's gotten more political, and it's getting more political at ever younger levels of education. And so, while I was initially surprised that there was this really contentious, politically divisive school board race, I mean, ultimately, the more I've learned, the less surprising it is. I think what is surprising is how in this community, basically, the Democrats really have a monopoly on the local school boards. And I guess, again, like, I shouldn't be surprised by that, because education is a left-leaning industry. I mean, it is, and that's fine. I've got a lot of left-leaning friends and family members.
How would you characterize your ideology? I have a feel for this already, and let me see if I can guess. Center, if anything, libertarian-leaning, fiscally conservative, socially liberal.
Yeah.
I think most folks are that way.
I was in the Peace Corps,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm not a crazy right winger. I'm moderate. There are certain things I'm more conservative on than others. I am socially liberal, but that has limits too, because I think things have become more in your face with certain things, like the transgender participation in women's sports. And I don't know if we want to go there. I don't know if I want to go there. But as to the Bryce Spillman contest, it just sort of seemed to be that Meg Bryce lost because of who her dad was, or that certainly didn't help her, right? I mean, there were spray painted signs out on 250 Ivy Road that had Scalia spray painted across a sign that said Meg Bryce. I mean, if we're measured by our parents and our other relatives, like, what does that say about, like, the issues? And the issues, as I saw them, were, post-pandemic scores are lower, and kids are not achieving the academic competencies that kids in the past years had. And so when Meg Bryce said, "I want to focus on the results, I want to focus on the academics," that seemed like a reasonable place to start. Whereas Spillman, I've been to her website, and it's just a lot of the buzzwords right now in education, inclusion and making sure kids feel safe at school. And I'm all for that. I'm all for empathy and kids feeling comfortable at school, but schools have a multifaceted purpose that includes academics, and those need to be factored in as well. So I wasn't surprised that Bryce lost. She would have lost by fewer percentage points if it wasn't for her dad.
1,000% agree with that.
And the Spillman campaign manager creating that website, Meg Scalia Bryce.
Christopher Seaman.
Yeah, I don't know him. I know he quit, but it just felt a little dirty. Felt a little dirty. And
hugely dirty. Background on that for the viewers and listeners. One-time campaign manager for Allison Spillman, Christopher Seaman, created a website. And interestingly, Judah was one of the ones that discovered that the website was tied to him. Was it you can weave you in, Judah. Was it the DNS records? The DNS records were not protected?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know that it was me that figured that out, but somebody went on a deep dive and found stuff like you can check what someone's IP is, and it'll give you information on who's registered the website. And I I think somebody had also made the incredibly smart sarcasm choice to use Chris Siemens' name as one of the logins. So a screenshot showed his name in.
Anytime he did a blog post,
Yeah, basically.
showed his name.
Oops.
And
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, right. I'll weave Kurt back into this. So the campaign manager of Spillman has to step down immediately as campaign manager of Spillman because he gets doxxed of creating a phony website that paints Bryce in a negative light. He then has to distance himself from the candidate, Allison Spillman, and say, oh no, this was me doing it. Then he tries to attribute it to a political action committee that he's a part of. And it just shows that the nastiness of federal and statewide politics has infiltrated the grassroots level in the most local way possible. These folks are making $500 a year on the school board. It's effing bananas.
That's what they make. I
Yeah.
didn't know they made anything.
Yeah, $500, effing bananas.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I mentioned in the book, Meg had a tough question to respond to when she has to acknowledge that her kids are in private schools and she's running for the board of a public school board. But I thought she handled those questions well, being part of the solution, being part of a community. But clearly that was anybody can acknowledge that was put her in a difficult position from the start. And had her kids been in public schools, would the election have flipped? I don't think so, but again, I think that would have helped her.
I think your read of this is perfect.
Yeah, I don't know her. I did send her a book just unsolicitedly, so this book is more about me trying to add to the conversation. I don't have all the answers, certainly, but I feel like I have a lot of experience. I'm a conscientious adult who pays attention to the issues. I'm a parent.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
What are their ages?
they're in high school,
Okay.
and they're getting a good public school education. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just think if I can sit down with somebody that disagrees with some things in the book, sure, let's have a coffee and let's talk about it, because I think in a lot of sectors of our society, we've lost the ability to have conversations. We all kind of exist in our echo chambers and surround ourselves with the viewpoints that we already agree with. So, here you go. Here's most teachers are Democrats. I'm not. I would not describe myself as a lifelong Democrat, but I've been having conversations with them, very civil conversations, my whole career, and it's kind of fun. It's okay to disagree.
Well said. Judah Wickower, we're going to weave you into the mix here in a matter of moments. Comments are coming in. I know he's got some questions for you. Vanessa says, 25 years ago, I had a friend describe Albemarle High School like this barbell model. I don't think things were as extreme back then, but the concept applied then too. The students that fall in the middle of a bell curve will be best served when they have family involvement at home. High achievers get what they need. There are plenty of services targeted at students who struggle. She also says the more community members ask or allow government into their daily lives, the more things will become political. Maria Marshall Barnes is watching the program, said the sad reality is this is happening at all of our local schools. SROs are beyond needed in the hallways of our schools. I concur with that. I 100% concur with that. Judah, if you want to get Bill McChesney, then I'll get you in on a 3-shot. Yes, it's been that way for years. The AP college track kids had their schedules built around band and orchestra. The other students had lesser electives. This was true when my kids were there in the early 2000s at Charlottesville High School. Judah, 3-shot. I think you had some compelling questions we talked about in pre-production.
Yeah, they may have changed, but so my first is of course the pandemic severely affected kids, but I can't believe that. As others have noted, this has been going on in schools for a long time, and so I wonder. You talk about 2/3 of your students, being interested in learning, being there for an education, and the other third is. Do you have a sense for where in their educational development they, I guess, gave up? Just
Is there apathy? Like, what does school mean to them? Is this just an opportunity, a filler for their day?
I mean, I wouldn't think that was something that was a learned behavior in high school.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, whether it was kindergarten, elementary school, somewhere they either they gave up, they didn't think they could succeed, or they just had so much of that from their fellow students that they kind of just stopped going to school to learn and started, like you said, lying at the back of the class in a bookshelf, scrolling their phone, wandering the halls. Like, as I said, do you have a sense where in the process they
Lost hope.
the school system failed them?
Given the brevity of my experience in public schools after 21 years overseas, I don't have the context to really talk about when these kids were lost. I think looking at issues like chronic absenteeism, though, and I had probably 120 kids rostered across my 5 classes, and on any given day I'd probably see maybe 90 kids. And so you have a chronic absenteeism problem in some of these classes that sort of shows an indifference to education, but also a lack of accountability for the parents and guardians who used to be held accountable, again, via sort of law enforcement. I mean, there are Virginia laws about making sure minor kids go to school. And so I think there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and I think they've all kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah.
Just from my limited perspective, given the time I've been here in the States.
Yeah, well, that leads me into a follow-up question. You're, as a teacher in Singapore and the other places that you had jobs, you talked about the administration, and I'm sure the parents as well, having a high bar that they wanted the teachers to live up to. And is that part of what's missing in our school? I mean, you said at CHS you got to help out in other classrooms. So you saw the other side. You saw students that were doing well, students that were in calm classes. Was the difference something similar where they have perhaps not administration at CHS? I don't want to, but parents, other people in their lives who cared enough to want to set that bar high, not just for the students, for their children, but for the teachers as well.
And I want to add some background to what he's saying. You helping out at other classes was not necessarily by choice. He highlights in the book that we did not have enough substitute teachers when teachers were sick or out that day. So the teachers had to utilize their free period, were basically told to utilize their free period to fill in for these other teachers that were absent that day because the substitutes were not available.
Correct. We would get emails that said it was our professional responsibility to cover so-and-so's class at such and such a time.
That's basically the professional guilt trip.
Yeah, I mean, we were paid, we were compensated. And I think for me, I didn't always like to do it, but it was interesting to look at the contrast between what I was experiencing on a classroom level to what other teachers were. Because I substituted for choir and act and drama, AP classes, business business classes, ESL classes, and so in most cases they were pretty tame, and the lesson plans that the teacher left were good, and the kids did what they were supposed to, etc. Back to Judah's question, I think there's the intrinsic value in learning when kids are just curious about the subject matter, and that drives what they learn. I think that's a huge thing, and not every kid loves every subject. Then there's the extrinsic stuff, like do your parents have high expectations for you? Does your teacher have high expectations for you? Are you in a classroom where there is sort of this common drive to succeed and compare your test scores with the kid next to you or your friend? So I think in some cases, both are an issue. Where that comes from, I think
That comes from home.
It comes from home. Yeah.
That comes from home, but like we have a 6-year-old, and I'm already seeing with our 6-year-old a competitive drive in him.
Yeah.
Like, and I say every night to him, every night I tug him, my wife is the consistent, calm rock of our family, and then I come in right before bedtime and I end up wrestling with him or punching him and wind him up. She's like, dude, what are you doing? We're trying to go to sleep and start watching some Netflix. Don't wind up our kid. But as I'm leaving the room, I say to him, I love you. Be the best version of yourself every day.
Yeah.
Like, that comes from hearing that from your parents.
Yeah. Yeah, and not everybody has two parents at home. Not everybody has parents that are invested in their kids as much as others. And so how do we support those kids? And that's when you get into this it takes a village mentality. And I mentioned in the book, maybe so much of school today is sort of based on the assumption that every kid's going to go to a 4-year college. Trade schools are great. Plumbers make great money. Not everybody wants to go to a 4-year university and sit in lecture halls. So where's the where's the creativity? Where's the innovation to find sort of make kids intrinsically motivated by something that they find engaging? We just again, I don't have all the answers. I have some ideas. I don't in any way think that I could necessarily put something together that's going to make sense tomorrow. But if you look historically, there have been all sorts of educational innovators that have gone into low socioeconomic communities and raised expectations, increased the accountability, improved the home-school partnership, and they have experienced great success. So yeah, I think ultimately, maybe in some senses, schools rest on their laurels and they do what's easiest, not what's best.
What have you seen, and you're killing this interview, we're an hour and change in here, it's flown by here. What have you seen with cell phones and social media and the impact of cell phones and social media on learning, on human connection and interaction?
Yeah.
I mean, there's thought given to these cell phone bags where you put the cell phones in a bag that you don't have access to, provided by a third party to the schools.
I think schools need to explain, particularly to parents.
Not all schools have the cell phone problem, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those socio-emotional competencies is like self-control, self-regulation. Plenty of adults have problems with it. You go to a restaurant and there's people on a date, they're both looking at their phone. I think schools, again, need to be the adult in the room. They need to make a good case for why cell phones are an obstacle to learning, communicate that effectively with the community, and make a good value decision based upon what's best for student learning. And phones are not. Phones are the biggest distraction, I would say the biggest obstacle to student learning right now, because if the school doesn't enforce the rules that they have regarding cell phone usage during class, then there's really nothing a teacher can do. We're told not to take the phones. That's just going to create a confrontation that we've seen in social media. We've seen it go violent. Teachers have been struck across the country for trying to take kids' phones. So, like any other rule and regulation that's not enforced, it's meaningless. So,
do you fear any backlash from the book?
Maybe. I don't. I'm new here. I don't. When we moved here in 2022, I didn't know anybody, and so That hasn't changed that much in a year plus. I guess I would, if people are offended by it, I would say, hey, get a hold of me, let's talk about it. I'm not an offensive person. I'm not confrontational either. But I feel like, given the experience I had last year, I had a unique opportunity from somebody that just kind of was plopped down in a U.S. public school.
Without pretense, without past experience to jade your view.
Yeah, and you know, I don't come at this with any ill intent.
Right.
I come at this as curious.
As an educator.
As an educator.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to better understand it. And I don't think any of the things that I'm advocating for in the book are sort of any groundbreaking, divisive things. They're just things that should be part of the conversation. There are things that are part of the conversation, but more often than not, it's not teachers that are interjecting their opinions. It's politicians, it's school boards, it's pundits, it's the teachers' unions. It is people that are not sort of there day to day interacting with kids and experiencing what's happening in the classroom. And again, there are issues all across the country, in Canada, in the UK. I mean, these are not unique dysfunctions to Charlottesville High. These are things that have happened recently, and I think the tide should kind of swing back and increase the accountability, raise expectations, and give students more choice.
Kate Schartz in Ivy, Virginia says this: my sister-in-law taught at a private Christian school and got several emails from parents daily. She now teaches in a public city school and cannot get more than a few parents at open houses, and she almost is never emailed. It's sad, but if kids don't have parents holding them to expectations, then they likely won't do it themselves. It's well said.
Yeah.
I'll close with obviously how folks can purchase your book. I want to put the cover of the book on screen so people can find it. I thought it was a fantastic read. Judah read it as well. I don't know if you want to offer any of your thoughts on it. I mean, this is a book you can read in a sitting or two. It is a page turner.
It's a short book. It's a book, but it's a short book, as I said in the acknowledgments.
But the fact that I'll even add some more background to this. The fact that we live in this community and a large portion of the book is about the only high school in the city that we're doing business in and living around makes it even more compelling. It is worth your money, ladies and gentlemen. So anything we're missing, anything that should be out there before I ask you how we can buy the book?
No, I don't think so. I think I've said
you were fantastic,
what I wanted to say. Well, I mean, this kind of thing is anxiety-inducing to me. I'm not here because I want to be I told you this prior. I'm not trying to enter into the fray of the social warrior
arena.
Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, this is one guy's perspective. Take it or leave it. It's on Amazon. It's a Kindle and paperback. If you're interested, I would appreciate your consideration. That's awesome.
You can buy the book, guys, on Amazon. You got it on screen?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent interview. Thank you, Kurt, for the time. For those that are watching that are asking, I see you asking, the interviews archived wherever you get your podcasting content. You can watch it start to finish. We archive all our shows on ilovecville.com if you want an easy access point to getting the content, ilovecville.com. His name is Kurt R. Johnson, and his book is called Schooled: The Miseducation of an American Teacher. And I have a very strong feeling that this book is going to be quite popular in this Central Virginia community. For Kurt and for Judah Wickower, my name is Jerry Miller, and that's the I Love CVille Show on a Wednesday afternoon in downtown Charlottesville. So long, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. He's going to tell us when the mics and cameras are